this is a wallet, and it's pretty empty, which is how pursuing YouTube can feel to a lot of people. Because you put in all the hard work, but it's just not paying off. Which brings up a bigger question. Should you keep going to stay in the game, or should you just quit? Because moving forward and moving in circles can feel very similar while you're inside the game. That's why I called up my first creator friend, Wojtek. He was living the dream, traveling the world while creating content, just to be faced by the reality of an empty bank account, which ultimately made him stop.
Being out of it now does not mean that I'll never return. It just means I'm freeing myself up for new direction.
Now it's his second time around on the channel, which feels especially important to mention here because last time he wasn't so sure about this decision. So now let's look at the reality behind the content to find out how and why he really quit. One topic I think that's kind of important to talk about is quitting. And when we recorded our first conversation, I mean, you and I, we've known each other since, was it 2021? I keep saying like, you're my first creator friend, right? When we sat down in 23 to record a podcast, you were kind of on the verge of quitting or like thinking about quitting. And so I thought this is a good opportunity to chat a little bit more about it because you did quit, what came out of it, how it all went, and your thoughts on it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, maybe a thing to start with is that I think people have a weird notion of quitting. I think it seems to people like a decision you make forever. Once I'm going to quit, I've quit forever. And that's just not true. I mean, even now I'm playing every now and then with the thought of coming back and starting again. But it comes from a way different place. It comes from a more mature place. I'd like to tell myself, as a very childish person, I think. Since now it's more about, okay, what can I actually do? What time can I invest? How much money is there? How long can I sustain it? Whereas before, it has more been a journey where I just threw myself in and tried to figure everything out on the go. And sometimes it works, sometimes it actually worked, and sometimes it didn't. And I think when we both spoke, I was just in a place where I have gotten so lost in the figuring it out that I was not feeling comfortable to keep running in circles anymore.
Interesting. I like the way you describe it of like running in circles and getting stuck in the trying to figure it out. Was there a moment where you knew it was time to quit?
No, it kind of forced itself upon me.
Why do you say that?
It was a very slow process, and I think so. This is not a believing thing. I think this is just a very natural thing. Sometimes life will push you in the directions that you kind of have been building up towards. And I think I've been already on my way out for a while, which, I mean, the whole conversation around playing with the idea of quitting suggests that, right? That I'm already mentally in a space where I consider that possible. And things just took me a lot of time. I think I've been partly sabotaging myself. I've been partly giving up projects that I think could have actually finally realized and created and could have done them way quicker. But I found just enough opportunities and reasons to stop myself from doing it. So that's kind of where it began. And then ultimately, hitting a financial zero on my bank accounts yet again was just another sign that, okay, this just isn't sustainable. I thought I would be smarter this time. I thought I would be able to pull the brakes sooner. I wasn't. And even then, after really stopping to create anything new, I was sometimes attempting to still do it again, but it just felt futile. It just felt like, what am I doing here? This is not for real. And I think what I took away from that was that despite not wanting to do YouTube, I still have the urge to create something. I'm still a creative, and there's still, I don't know, some kind of artistic expression, whatever the fuck you want to call it, in me that wants to do its thing. So that's actually reassuring, because one of my big fears of stepping away from the whole game was that I'll eventually lose that creativity, right? Because I was in that space before. I was formerly trained to be an insurance broker, and at some point I just realized it was so hard to channel any sort of creativity because I just wasn't using that muscle at all. But now
Hmm.
I'm in a very different place where I would never consider a job like that again. So I'm doing a job right now, and I've been doing jobs before that still need creativity, where I still exercise that muscle, and I'm not losing that. And that inner urge to do something, to create something, to make something doesn't really go away. I'm not sure I'm answering the question. I'm
You went off into a direction, but that's good. One thing I'm curious about is you stayed in it quite a while, and you said like hitting a zero again and getting lost in, the weeds of making it work. Why do you think you stayed in it for as long as you did? Was it because you really believed you can make it work? Or was it simply a fact of like, oh, I've been doing it so long, I want to do more of it? Or was it that, creativity part you just talked about?
I wish there was some kind of romantic notion to it, but I think it was mostly just sunk cost and being afraid, and probably also a little bit of identity issues around the whole. One of the biggest changes that has happened is once you stop being a creator, you realize, oh, there's a whole fucking world out there. Who would have thought? And while you're in it, everything's YouTube. You know, when we
Yeah.
were staying in a house together with Aiden, Kat, my wife, was kind of making fun of us that, like, when we would talk about it, it would just be like very odd to sit next to it and hear us speak about like this microcosmos. But when you're running the creator game, it's not a microcosmos. It is the cosmos. It is the universe. It's the one thing that counts.
Let me pause here for a moment. Because what Wojtek said there is that it's quite weird seeing all these people talk about nothing else but YouTube. And at first, I felt a little bit sad about this. But then I remembered the reason why this happens is because we have so few opportunities to really talk about this, to get into the weeds of YouTube, because it does feel like an entire cosmos, a complete universe. But regular people just don't understand the intricacies of it. And that is exactly why I started the Creator Trust Club. There we get together once a month to talk about all the details that nobody else cares about, but that really matter to you. If that sounds interesting to you, the link for that is down in the description, and I really hope to see you there.
I think it really, what prevented me from stepping away sooner was I've invested so much time, I invested so much effort, so many thoughts, so many unfinished projects that I still somewhere believed I could actually finish and that had potential and were worth it. Being afraid of having invested that for nothing, which, I think it's humbling and also valuable to remind oneself that that's normal. We all invest energy in life into things that will never fully materialize, that will never fully pay off. That's just irregular. But then, yeah, also being scared of what's next. Like, where do I go from here? Because going back into a job, into employment, which is what I did, felt
Mm-hmm.
like, it didn't feel like progress. It felt like degenerating in a sense. So that was also something that I had to turn around in my mind, in my head, the whole mindset of, oh, I'm making steps back instead of progressing, which just isn't true. Life has changed, and that's just another change I have been doing, and it has so far also paid off. And yeah, the last bit is really being identified with, I'm a creator, I'm an artist, I'm a creative, I'm this and that, and yada, 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 and blah, blah, blah. If I'm not that, what will I be? Turns out I'm quite a few things, even without being a creator. And yeah, it was just unwarranted to be weirdly so afraid of it, but also not being able to, yeah, to just be honest with myself and to admit that actually, yeah, a big part of not being able to step away is from just being scared, really. Now, with a little bit more distance, I can say that in the most childish ways.
So, how did it actually feel once you did make the decision?
Not great. I mean, I was quite lost, and I was already, like I said, I was trying to always plan kind of a comeback, always plan a new project, which I think is the reason why So many people don't do just one video that has a title along the lines of "I quit," but they just do, 5 of those videos. And I'm kind of happy I did none of that. I did not one of that. I just did my last video, and it kind of felt like a bit of a goodbye. That's something that always stuck with me. That the last video I made, I was happy with the production quality, with how it looked, with what I said. This feels like a good way to end things. But what came after was really struggling a lot and having a lot of trouble finding my footing in the, I don't want to say real or normal world again, because it felt a little bit like a different world yet again. One would think that, oh, returning to employment and regular jobs, etc., and writing fucking applications, I know how that works. I know how to orient myself in this world. But the world had moved on. It was quite a bit different. I also changed my lifestyle completely. I'm working and living fully remote still.
Hmm.
So there was a very long phase where I felt a little bit more lost than before quitting, even. Because when I quit, I felt lost in the game that I was familiar with. And then I suddenly have even abandoned that. Yeah, it was kind of tough to go through, but I also don't want to over dramatize it. I don't want to be like, oh, I hit rock bottom. There was no money. I barely even made it. I went from volunteering job to volunteering job. I think this was the end of my life and my relationship. Yeah, no, there were a lot of struggles. There were a lot of doubts. There were a lot of fears. But I just think that's part of mature life to kind of face those and, handle them. Not even overcome them, but just realize, yeah, life sometimes is tough. Cool. We handle it, we move on, we find a solution.
And what came after it? Like, what was kind of the outcome of you quitting? What was enabled by you making that decision?
First and foremost, earning money again. That didn't hurt.
Hmm.
Playing the YouTube game has mostly just drained my finances.
Yeah.
I've also made a little bit of money here and there, and I also find a few opportunities to collaborate and make some money here and there. But while I was trying to be successful on YouTube, the main goal was always I want to be successful, not I want to work for others. I want to use YouTube to build a business and earn money with that. I want to be successful on YouTube. And that has also prevented me from making money, right? It has very often made me create a new video, then take a job that would make me money. Because kind of working on everything else but my own stuff felt very much like a hindrance to making my own stuff.
Hmm.
And I think that's also something that if I ever go back, I need to remodel in my head because ultimately you want to play the long game, whatever you're doing, whether it's YouTube, building a business. You want to play the long game and you want to enable yourself to do it. So yeah, what came of it was I went to speak a little bit more concretely. I joined one startup. So things that were clear for me from the start is I don't want to join corporate. That's fucking boring. They earn a lot of
Hmm.
money, yes, but they probably also don't want me. I don't have the CV for it, and I don't want to live in that culture. I also want to work fully remote, not like very often it is in Europe. You usually can just work remote in your country, which makes me very much question like what is the point? And by setting those requirements for myself, but then also requirements in terms of pay and requirements in terms of industry and fields and jobs I want to work in, there's not that many jobs one can do. So I joined a startup as a social media manager, which was kind of like the most obvious choice. Worked with them for a while. It was pretty fun. Pay was all right. They loved me. And after actually getting a permanent contract, so in Germany is very often you have 6 months probation period,
Hmm.
then you get your final contract. So 6 months go by, they love me, I love them, I get my permanent contract 1 month later, and that's kind of startup life. I didn't really have that on my radar. The numbers started going down and they needed to let a few people go. I was one of them. So I was kind of thrown back onto the market, and it proved to be actually a pretty, yeah, kind of a stroke of luck almost, because I joined another company in the same industry, and the culture they lived fit me way better. So I'm still working with them now. And, in the last months, I very often caught myself thinking, oh, I want to start something again. I want to do my own thing. But everything's pretty good right now. Everything's pretty cool right now. I kind of like the job. I like showing up. I like being really productive. I like having people around me and not doing everything just by myself. So yeah, today I'm not a social media manager, but I run kinda under the title of creative strategist, which today very often is confused with performance marketing creative strategists. That's not what I'm doing. They're also doing a great job, but I'm more kind of like a creative director, creative lead, and strategist, plus operational skills like video editing, shooting photos, etc. Which is very similar to what one does when you're trying or when you're being a creator. You're kind of a little bit of all of it.
But in this case, it's not your personal success. It's, contributing to the brand success.
Yeah, true. But this is where I'm really, really happy with the company I'm working with, since the company is all about its culture, and it doesn't feel like I'm working for the company. It feels like I'm working with and for the people, and that I can identify with. If we were working together on a team, and I would be working for our success, I can do that. If I'm working just for this abstract entity that's trying to earn money and satisfy shareholders, I'm having much more trouble with that on my value side. But here, being driven mostly by a culture that values and honors its people, I can do that.
And since you quit, have you looked back at your old channel at all, or is it completely ignored?
No, of course I do. Also, people keep finding it. It's funny, very often in my head, I'm like, if I don't mention it, people will never, ever gonna find it. But they do, and I mean, it's still generating views and subscribers. It's been more than a year since I've quit, and there's still stuff happening, which is very interesting. Still comments, I still answer those. People keep finding the channel, and of course, so I look at it as well. And sometimes I look at a video, and I'm still pretty proud in the sense that, oh, I've actually made this, and yeah, this has turned out pretty good. And sometimes I'll look back on videos, and I'm thinking a little bit like, what? Why? But I guess the thing that I'm sometimes missing is when I was creating those videos, very often there was a sort of a documentation there happening. In the beginning, more literally with travel content, I was actually documenting our travels. But then with all the other videos, when I watch them back, I still know, oh, I've been in that place at the time. This was this phase where this and that is happening. It's still a pretty cool memory to look back at where I have been, since even the topic might be completely unrelated. I know where I've shot those videos because I very often wasn't using a studio. I was just using what I had at hand in a given environment. But also just the whole progress of, I don't know how you feel when you watch your first videos back, but
Cringe.
I mean, yes, that's there as well. But then I also look at that and I'm like, yeah, I've actually learned a lot. I've gone quite a way.
Yeah.
Which really helps me with how I'm handling job and work situations right now. Since the one thing that shocks me very often is how, and I'm not necessarily speaking about the company I'm working for and the people there. I'm rather speaking about other people I've met that I work externally with. I'm shocked by how mediocre people are in their profession. I mean, for real, you're working with video editors, graphic designers, strategists. They're not great at their jobs. I mean, they're okay at it. I mean, I've so far not met anyone where I would say, "Look, you gotta leave this job. You gotta look for something else." Um, but then at the same time, I'm very much shocked at how they see themselves as like professionals. And in my head, it's like I know 5 people that don't do this for a living. They kind of do this for fun or as a side hustle. They're much, much better. Like they're 2, 3, 4 levels above what you're doing here right now.
So if you look back, do you think you quit too early, too late, or just at the right time?
Too late. Too late. I could have saved myself a lot of financial troubles by doing it earlier. Since also when you step into negotiations, whether it's for freelance jobs or for a job, you don't really want to be in a position where you need the money, right?
Yeah.
You want to be in a position where you can comfortably decline every offer below what you actually want to earn.
Yeah.
And that's really hard when you're negotiating and you're trying to get more, but right now I would be happy about anything. And yeah, I also wish I would have done it sooner, since I could have progressed way sooner in a direction that right now I feel much more comfortable with. And I think the things I'm starting to realize about what I would do different when I would start again, I also could have realized that much sooner. But I was so lost in the woods, as they say in Germany, that I couldn't see the trees for the forest. I was too deep in there to realize my mistakes. And I was also too influenced by YouTube itself and by what the people on the platform have been saying. So I don't know how you think about this. I mean, please tell me. But my feeling very often is that there's a whole sector of YouTube advice that is not about giving you good advice. It's just about giving you entertaining advice. Advice that keeps you
Mhm.
busy, advice that gives you a very good feeling, advice that makes you think about it in a very simple way and therefore gives you the courage to give it a go.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because that is basically the whole premise of what I'm doing now. All of the advice out there is quite simplistic. And if you follow steps 1, 2, and 3, you will succeed as a creator. But it's all lacking nuance, and it's all lacking a bit of reality, because especially on algorithm driven platforms, you will only ever see the top, let's call it the top 10% of everything that's uploaded. So there will always be 90% of people who just don't make it, quote unquote, right? And all of that advice might work for somebody, might work in certain situations, but none of it is a silver bullet. And the most telling advice, or the only piece of truth I've really embraced right now, is that whatever somebody tells you is working, the opposite is also true, because there is no one single path. So yeah, that's where I am right now.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the platform is catering to such a big audience. And as you're saying, I mean, it has been the case so many times that someone says, is this kind of content doesn't work. And a week later, it's the trending kind of content. And everybody wants to jump on the train. It's also a little bit more than that. I think so. There's one piece of advice I've lately been thinking about. And exactly as you're saying, it's not only that the opposite is true, both are true, right? And kind of alluding to pick a niche or like pick one topic, where I'm thinking, yes, that's true, but it kind of goes a little bit further than that, than just a strategy of what is a good topic? Where do I have many ideas? It is much more about pick something you're really passionate about, pick something you really want to create around intrinsically, so you don't have to constantly motivate yourself and constantly research, but kind of the topics just keep coming to you. And then don't stick with it for strategy reasons. Believe in it, not in a naive sense, but just believe that, okay, this topic is really interesting. This topic is really valuable. I want to make content around this topic, whether or not it gets successful. But ultimately, I want it to be successful. Therefore, I want to make it well. So even that's a little bit of contradicting advice, right? And then just stick with it for however long you need to stick with it. And don't try to over optimize it, since I think that has ultimately killed me and my channel. At the very end of my journey, I was trying to play in the best way to the algorithm that was suggested to me lately. Just instead of making the videos I actually wanted to make, were very often the videos I just did that I really love making, that I really wanted to make, those documentaries that were like way too long and that had intros that were way too long and the visual hook wasn't right and this wasn't right. Like too many things you could criticize, but they eventually did well. Those are the videos that did well in the long run. And then all the one-hit wonders that I was trying to produce, all the quick wins that I was trying to produce, they never really, like, one or two videos, yeah, they kind of hit it off very quickly and very early, but the rest of it tanked. And instead of making something I really wanted to make, making something that in the long shot would have probably proven to work really well, I just started to make things hoping desperately to win.
I can relate to that feeling, and I think a lot of people are finding themselves in a situation like that. So when you do think about a person who is in that situation, who's chasing the dream, trying to make it work, whatever phrase you want to use, but they are probably thinking about quitting, or they're unsure if this can actually work for them, what would you tell them?
Nothing. I mean, I'm not sure I want to say it like that, but I think I want. I think the one most toxic trait that we have across Western culture is to give not only unsolicited, but unhelpful advice to people that are in a situation that we ultimately cannot relate to.
Mm.
If someone is in a situation that is similar to mine, it is not the same situation. If you are in that situation, well, I cannot fucking read your mind. I don't know your financial status. I don't know how your relationship is doing. I don't know your future plans. I mean, I cannot really give you helpful advice. I mean, one of our friends, Aiden, he was in a situation where he was considering to doing a lot of things, you know, and I, in my mind, thought, yeah, maybe you should just, you know, just quit it for now, get a few freelance jobs, or quit for now, get a job. And ultimately, I don't know if stroke of luck or bad luck. I mean, he was in a situation where kind of both mixed. And eventually he started to get really traction on Instagram. You know, so my advice would have proven extremely unhelpful. Or I don't know, when I'm thinking about Justin, who is a full-time dad, and I don't know what else he was doing on the side. If he would have told me that, okay, I'm gonna try to bang out the best possible content for 3-4 months every day and put so much editing work into it that I will have sleepless nights on end while raising a child, my advice would have not been go for it, good idea. But I mean, that proved eventually helpful.
Fair. This is the most Wojtek response so far.
The fuck does that mean?
Whenever this is the first time that I asked somebody for like, hey, give somebody in that situation advice, everybody comes up with an answer. But you go a step beyond and realize that whatever advice you can give is not actually useful to that person. Are there some signs when people should quit the creator thing, the YouTube thing, whatever? Do you think there are moments that are an indicator for like, maybe you should take this less serious?
That's a difficult question to answer, in the sense that it depends on many factors, but there are a few signs that will tell you to take a break. And I think when those accumulate, they will probably push you in the direction of quitting, at least for a while. One is just very clear finances, you know, that whole romanticism around I hit rock bottom and then I finally found success. Yep,
Mhm.
that's, you know, for everybody who still believes that that's kind of, or excuse me, let me rephrase that. I don't think people believe that's the common way things happen, but they want to believe it is. So when they find themselves in a situation where they hit rock bottom, they're almost expecting like success must be somewhere around the corner. The reality of it is that's just a storytelling framework, a proven one. People
Yeah.
love those stories from rags to riches. Um, but yeah, if you're financially doing unwell and you're risking your well-being, that's a sign to step away and maybe do something else. Um, Not necessarily quitting, but at least taking a break, or taking a break by actually working something else. I mean, can also be a mundane job. Sometimes those really help to reset things and the mindset. Another sign is just if you get frustrated with the tasks you used to love. You know, when you used to love photography and videography and you find yourself that being a drag. When you used to love video editing and you don't really want to open the editing suite anymore or look at it. When you find yourself procrastinating with things that ultimately make you unhappy instead of doing the things that could be done today, I think those are all telling signs. And I mean, to kind of circle a little bit back to what I've said earlier and giving people advice, but then also alluding to the question you just asked me, I think the best thing you can do is to just genuinely check in with yourself. Since for me, was that I found myself in a place where I wanted to actually live a different life. I mean, I was living in a van, traveling, doing all the cool stuff that I wanted to do for, I don't know, 5-ish, 6, 7, 8 years. I have actually built that lifestyle that I wanted to have. Just even, I shouldn't say just, but even with very little money. And I would have somehow been able to sustain it. But I was also thinking forever about having a family. And the whole lifestyle I built, everything I've done, all the decisions that I've made in the recent years have not been helping me to build a life where I can have a family. They have done the opposite. They have just a circle around my little male fragile ego that so desperately wanted to be seen and successful on YouTube. And yeah, that's pathetic. I don't want to be pathetic. I want to make my own choices. I want to be free to live the life that I want to live. That check-in came too late. And I think that's also a telling sign, when you find yourself in a place where you feel like I'm doing what I want to do, but I do not feel great.
So, with where you are now, what does success actually look like for you?
Having privacy. There's something weirdly freeing about not sharing every random and minuscule thought or impulse that I have on social media. I mean, I started doing it less and less towards the end, but it's nice to sometimes, have private moments. It's sometimes sad to not have more memories and be around people where everybody captures them. But it is nice to know that some things stay in a very closed circle. Intimacy does no longer need to be displayed, but intimacy can actually be lived again, like truthfully. I feel like that brings me in a different way in touch with people again. Success also means to not waste away multiple hours on YouTube. I'm watching way less YouTube now that I do not consider myself a YouTuber anymore. I watch YouTube very strategically, very selectively, but I do not, randomly binge around and try to find the access to the secret code of becoming a successful YouTuber. I think I also became a little bit better in touch and positively in touch with earning money and making money, and the importance of that. I was never really great with it. I never really had the drive to earn a lot of money and have a lot of money. That changed a little bit. So the success is not necessarily earning a lot of money, but success definitely is having enough money to freely make choices and to make choices that make me feel comfortable. Not choosing the cheapest Airbnb that will somehow satisfy my needs, but just choosing a place to stay in, maybe with friends, maybe without. That's great. That's fun to stay in. Like, for instance, next month we're moving into a house with 8 people in the middle of the Picos de Europa in Asturias, which is close to 2 national parks. It's super green. It's 45 minutes away from the sea, 45 minutes away from a national park with mountains that will remind you of the Alps and most people have never heard about. And the house is fucking amazing. So I'm looking forward to that. And, back in the day, not only could have I not paid for the house, but I could have not, as I'm doing right now with my wife, made that whole event happening, since we're kind of bringing the energy and providing some of the finances upfront to actually make it happen. And this has led to other people joining us and also chipping in financially. So we don't carry the financial burden all by ourselves. Finances and being comfortable with finances. That is success. And what's success as well is to being able to be a bit more present with everyone I'm around. And success also means to be able to make the decisions I really want to make, to be in a place where when I say, hey, I want to start a family, I actually can do that. And I do not need to tell myself just a few more years or I just need one success. No, I can make those decisions now. Technically, I could make the decision now to also go back in the YouTube game, try that again, if I want. I would have not expected how happy I can be without the YouTube and creator game. I did not consider that that can be fine as well. And I say it again, being out of it now does not mean that I'll never return. It just means I'm freeing myself up for new directions. And it also has made it possible for me to assess my skills in a completely different light and realize that some of the things I've been doing, I was not the best person for. and that my strengths actually lie in different areas. So if I were to ever come back, I would approach it a little bit differently and definitely less lonely.
I have to ask, how would you do that, the less lonely part?
Explicitly, I would at least hire an editor. Because I always told myself I have a very specific editing style and it's me and I gotta do it and I cannot really explain it to anybody else. Over the last years, I've also realized I kind of hate editing. I dread it. I loved it in the beginning. Today I dread it. I love to put on the finishing touches. I still love that.
Yeah.
I love to bring things together. I love the conception phase, all of that. But editing is just a skill that takes me the most time, drains the most energy, and that I procrastinate on the most. So if an editor was there, I would love that. If there was somebody that could help with branding, graphic design, making thumbnails, yeah, I would also love to hire that person. Not because I'm lazy, but because I'm starting less and less to realize I'm not the best person. I'm not the person best qualified to do those things. B, I can use my energy much better, much more wisely, much more effectively, and also just genuinely faster if I do the things I'm really good at.
Now, as always, there's an extended version of this conversation over on the Patreon, the Creator Trust Club. There, we also have a call once a month where we talk about the reality behind the content. If that sounds interesting to you, the link for that is down in the description, and I really hope to see you there. Because you put in all the hard work, but it's just not paying off. And it's pretty empty, which feels particularly important to mention